Welcome to the MINDXFRAME podcast, where we discuss all things mindset. My name is Tara, and in each episode, I sit down with experts in psychology and neuroscience, as well as individuals who have achieved the extraordinary in the world of business, sports, and beyond. My aim with each episode is to uncover insight into how our minds work and how our thoughts, beliefs, and attitudes shape our experiences and performance. With that being said, let's get into today's episode.
Write your CV in 5 or 10 years from now. What would you want it to say if you don't put pen to paper and write it down? I mean, literally, get a pen, write on a piece of paper, start going, calling, showing up in somebody's office, asking questions, learning about it, researching it. Nothing is gonna be given to you. Nothing is gonna be given to you. Have that attitude and always think, if I want it, I gotta go out there and get it.
In this week's episode, Steve Varsano, founder and CEO of the jet business, joins the podcast. Steve has become a trailblazer in the industry by reinventing the way private jets are marketed and sold. Through the jet business, Steve created the world's first ever street-level showroom dedicated to the sale and acquisition of private jets. I had the opportunity to interview Steve in the showroom itself, which features a full-scale layout of a corporate jet right on Park Lane in London. In this episode, Steve shares his journey from washing dishes to pay his way through flight school to becoming the founder and CEO of the jet business. We discuss Steve's advice when it comes to starting a business and pursuing your vision, as well as his mindset of perseverance, never giving up, and hard work. With that being said, please welcome Steve Varsano to the podcast. Great to be here on Park Lane. I think maybe we can rewind and start at the beginning. What was your upbringing like, and what were those early experiences that shaped you?
So, I was born in Bronx, New York. I have an older brother, a younger brother and sister, and basically brought up with a single mom. Got divorced when I was very, very young, so I saw my real father very little in my younger years. So I never really had a father figure in my life. My mother worked 2 jobs most of my life, trying to support 4 kids. So we always had a lot of freedom in our day, in our world. And then we moved from New York to New Jersey. That's really where I stayed until I graduated from high school when I was 17. I worked a lot during the years from when I was 7 until I finished high school. I worked so much that I would not go to school that much because it seemed a little boring to me. And so I graduated in the bottom 10% of my high school. Wow. Because I hardly went to any classes except the ones I really liked to go to. But then I went to university and I took a lot of student loans out. So it was real. I was getting debt. I never knew what that really was. I got a lot of debt and I started going to school for aviation. It was something I loved doing, and so I got through university. I took double loads in my academics and flying courses. I graduated magna cum laude, I think number 2 in the class, because I was paying for it, and I had a different attitude. Sure. And I did a couple of these what they called cooperative education jobs during university. So I tested out of some courses and I got out of school much quicker than normal.
Is that where your kind of grit and hardworking attitude, endurance came from, those early years?
Well, I can say yes. That's where I think about it in my head, yes. My mother worked a lot, and I looked at her always working, and I always just wanted stuff, and I knew nobody would give it to me, so I had to just go out. So I think that's the reason why. It's the only logical reason why. Sure. But when I look at my brother and sister, why didn't they get the same thing? So I don't know the answer to that.
So it was more of an innate drive that you had to begin with. Yeah. Curious, is there an innate mindset or character trait that you've had that's allowed you to get to where you are?
I think when I was young, I always worked, okay? I've always wanted to get something, and I've never been able to depend on anybody giving me anything, so I always had to do it for myself. And I started when I was 7 years old, sweeping floors in a beauty salon. Friday nights and Saturdays to have some money to go out. But I always had this drive to work and make some money to be able to buy stuff, to do stuff. I don't know, just to challenge myself, I guess, I don't know. And I heard a term that I never heard before. This guy, Ari, the big agent from Beverly Hills, he used the term emotional endurance.
Oh, interesting.
And I thought it was a really good term because that is really, in my business now, but in entrepreneurs' business, I mean, you really have to go through incredible different kinds of hard times, good times, people with good intentions, bad intentions, no intentions, and to be able to adjust your emotion to adapt to those without getting yourself so far down. I think that emotional endurance is a pretty cool term. And so that's something I think if you can get through those down periods, because that's the problem. People get to that point and they just, I can't do this, I'm giving up, and you get off the Ferris wheel.
Yeah.
But if you have that endurance, you say, let me just get through this and see what happens. And that's an entrepreneur's life, right? I mean, you just are constantly standing up and going again.
Interesting. So, I've never heard that term before. I really like that. Because they say, like, never give up or things like that.
Yeah.
But emotional endurance.
It's easy to say.
Yeah, but I think emotional endurance, it resonates more in a way.
Yeah.
Because everyone knows what those ups and downs feel like. I guess, how do you build that emotional endurance then to deal with those things yourself?
I really don't want to stop if I'm working on something until I get it done, or until it fails, or somebody terminates a contract or something. I always feel like there's always something else. You know, there's another saying that basically, when you really think you've done every possible thing to get something done and it hasn't worked, I mean, you haven't. There's always something else you could do, something else you could try. Never give up until you don't have a choice, and when somebody else's choice. So, but if it's your choice to give up, you always have something else you can do. That's the key.
Amazing. I love that. And so I also wanted to rewind a bit because I believe before you went to university, you started to get really interested in aviation and flying. If you could just talk through how that passion started.
So when I was 14 years old, a friend of mine, his father, was taking flying lessons, and I just happened to be at their house that day, and he said, "Hey, listen, you guys, I'm going up for a flying lesson. If you want to come up for a ride, it's a 4-seater airplane. You can come." I'm like, I mean, I'm in New Jersey. What's an airplane? I mean, literally, I mean, I never thought I'd
been
ever
on
been.
one.
No.
Wow.
I mean, I think maybe on a commercial plane to Florida or something on a trip. I can't remember, but I'd never been in a small plane. And I said, yeah, sure, I'll do it. You know, why not? And we went and got up in the air, and I was like, wow, this is so cool. I mean, I can't believe I'm in this little, it's like sitting in a lawn chair at about 2,000 feet. But it was just so cool, free, flying over the city. It was amazing. I'm like, I got to learn how to fly.
Yeah.
So I decided at that point, I was still working as a dishwasher in a restaurant and busboy. I started taking flying lessons, and I literally had to work for 3 weeks or 4 weeks, save up enough money to take each flying lesson.
Oh, wow.
So that's how I started. And I soloed when I was 16. I got my license when I was 17. And then I went to university for a degree in aeronautical studies.
Interesting. So you've had that passion since you were really young. And then once you graduated from university, where did you go from there?
So it was interesting because when I finished university, I had no job. I actually went to the career placement office in the school, not really looking for a job, just because the secretary was very good looking. and I'd go in there and just, talk. And I went in there after I graduated, and it was just before Christmas, actually.
Okay.
So, listen, I don't know what I'm going to do. Just figured I'd come in and see if anything's come up. And it was actually, this job just came up in Washington, D.C. It's in a lobbying association. Okay. You need to have statistics background. You need to have a marketing background. It's an aviation lobbying group. And I didn't have statistics or marketing background at all, but I did an internship in Washington the previous summer with another lobbying group. And I said, it's perfect. That's perfect for me.
Okay.
I said, let me see this. She goes, yeah, they're going to be interviewing next month in January. I looked at the paper and I started reading. Wow, this sounds like a super exciting, cool job. They're representing all the airplane manufacturers and stuff.
Okay.
And I said, wow, thank you. And I literally went home, got one of my only suit I had in my closet, and got in my car, and I drove to Washington from Florida,
Oh,
where I was in
wow.
university.
Yeah.
And I literally drove right up to Washington and went into the office of this association, and I said, yeah, I'm here to apply for this job. And they said, well, thank you, but it's not till next month for the interviewing. I said, well, I'm here in Washington anyway. Can I just see the president? And, well, he's not here right now. He's not going to be here most of the day. I said, I'm here. I'm going to wait for him if you don't mind. I sat there. I can't remember how many hours I was there, but finally the guy came in, and the assistant said, he just came in. He wants to talk to you about the job. And he was nice enough to see me. Somehow I talked him into hiring me, and they never went through the process the following month.
Oh, wow.
The job.
Oh, that's amazing.
I circumvented the system and started the next month at the job in Washington. So
amazing.
That was my first.
So he was the president of the
lobbying, the trade association.
So even then, it seems like you went for what you wanted and just.
Yeah, I figured the only advantage I'm going to get is if I get there first, rather than be in the mix with other people. How can you get a competitive edge? Why am I going to wait? It's sort of like when you say, I'm going to go on a diet. I'm going to start next week, I'm going to go on a diet, or I'm going to stop smoking. I'm going to stop smoking next month. If you're going to stop, stop. Just stop. Why you have a date, And it's like the old Nike ad, just do it. And I just was sitting there in that office, and I'm like, wow, it's great. I have nothing to do. I have no job. It's coming up to Christmas, New Year's. I'm going to go see what it's about.
Yeah.
So.
Very cool. Even that, I think, is a very important mindset to have with things. It's a great example. What do you think about, there's kind of this debate around following your passion versus going down the more corporate route that's more lucrative. I feel like there's a constant debate between those two. What's your feeling on that?
I mean, there's no question, follow your passion. Sometimes if you're following your passion, you're going to be happy in your space, and that's really most of the time. It's better you're happy in the space you're going to every single day. Of course, everybody wants to make money and be wealthier and have other things, but to be happy in your job is much more important than being in a job that pays a lot of money and you hate it every day.
Sure.
So if you're passionate, I think super passionate, you'll become a success at it. What level of success depends on how much you're putting into it. It gets into that work-home balance, which doesn't really exist, but that work-home balance, the more you work, the luckier you get, the more successful you are. I mean, it's common sense.
So did you feel that way when you were washing dishes and really working your way just to get your pilot's license? Did you ever feel that debate in your mind? Like when you went to the career office, was there anything that tempted you?
I went to the career office, actually. I was actually pretty down. I have a ton of debt from my school loans. I don't have a job. What am I going to do? So I felt a little bit down at the time, but again, it's that emotional endurance thing. I didn't know what you called it then, but just keep going, and as they say, shit happens. If you don't get out there, you don't see people, you don't mix with people, nothing will ever happen. And it's even more the case today with technology and social media, less and less people doing what we're doing right here.
Yeah.
Even if you did this on Zoom, it's not the same thing. I always felt like getting in front of somebody, something will happen out of it.
How did you go from, you had this job in DC, what was your journey from there to then starting the jet business?
The lobbying job, the trade association job, was incredibly, from an ego standpoint, bragging rights. I mean, I'm 22 years old, and I'm walking through the halls of Congress and talking to congressmen and senators and legislative aides, and it was like, wow, I mean, this is, amazing. I got paid $13,000 a year.
Okay.
And, as you're talking about 1980, or 1978 actually, 1978. And as part of the job, we represented all the airplane manufacturers. The companies that made the small little airplanes, the 2 4-seaters, they had to rotate, giving the trade association a brand new airplane every 6 months for the employees to be able to use. So instead of having a company car, they had a company plane.
Okay.
It was a little 4-seater, turbocharged engine, a nice little thing. They said, you can use the airplane anytime you want and just have to pay for fuel. Okay. That was part of the benefits.
Right.
But it's making $13,000 a year. Even in those days, I was having a hard time paying for gas in my car, let alone an airplane. My roommate at the time owned a nightclub, one of the hottest clubs, and the disco was first, going, and so I had to deal with him. I fly, you buy, because he had a lot of money, and I said, you pay for the fuel, and I'll fly the plane. And we used to on weekends, meet people and go fly to New York for the weekend. I worked in his nightclub at night to earn some extra money.
Okay.
So I worked as a doorman. It was a very high level. You had to have dressed, correctly. You can turn people down. But that time it was one of the hottest clubs and restaurants in Washington. And a lot of the legislative aides and congressmen, senators, they used to come to this place. It was a beautiful place. So in the daytime, sometime in my office, when everybody's, oh my God, this congressman so-and-so or the chief counsel of the federal aviation's coming in, everybody's excited at what's going to happen. They got to be on their best behavior. They would come in the office and they'd see me. Oh, hey, Steve, how you doing? Man, what a great time last night. And they were like, what the heck's going on? I had a different relationship with some of these people.
Yeah.
And so I learned this is a great way to help with one business through another, social scene. In those days, you can't really do it today, but every PA, every secretary, every legislative aide used to come in there. And if I ever needed anything for my day job, I would just call one of them because they all came to this club.
Yeah.
And say, hey, I need this, this, and this. Yeah, no problem. We'll get it to you. It was great. At night, I actually ran into a guy at the club, and he had a jet tie pin. I'm one of the rare guys still that wears a tie. And I said, how come you have a jet on your tie? And he says, oh, I sell planes. What do you mean you sell planes for the manufacturer? No, we sell used planes.
Okay.
So really? What do you mean? And he explained what he did, and I said, wow, that's pretty interesting. Over the next few months, he used to come in when they used to have paper checks. Hey, look, Steve, I sold one, and this was $5,000. He told me, oh, this is $10,000. And over the course of a few months, he would show me these checks he was making.
Wow.
I'm like, where do you work? I want to get a job there.
Yeah.
No, we're not hiring anybody. And I said, yeah, but this is what I do in the daytime. I know aviation. So I finally convinced him to introduce me to his boss. After talking to the guy for 2 hours, he said, but you never sold anything, besides newspapers from door to door. And I said, yeah, but you've been sitting here listening to me for 2 hours. So I sold you, I think, to listen to me. And I don't know, we really don't have any experience. Finally, I said, listen, how about if I just work here for free? You don't have to pay me. Let me do it. I'll learn how you sell airplanes. And when I sell an airplane, you can pay me.
Okay.
And how can he say no to that? So I said, okay, fine. I quit my job as a lobbyist. I got that job. And then I got a job as a waiter in a restaurant at night because I had to pay the rent.
Yeah.
That's how that all started.
I think that's really interesting. A lot of people can feel like I don't have experience and talk themselves out of even going for a position like that. So it seems like you had that innate, I guess, sales ability.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the one thing again, rewinding and re-engineering the reason, the one thing about lobbyists, a trade association, is you are trying to convince or educate the legislative aide, the congressmen, the senators, on not doing something to change the law or legislation to hurt your industry. In our case, the airplane manufacturing industry. We were always fighting to make sure they didn't impose laws to close down airports, to make noise regulations that would hurt our business. But the problem is there's a lot of people like me who were doing the same kind of thing for different associations.
Okay.
So when a law changed or didn't change, you can never know if you had anything to do with that success of that law changing. So you never got that pat on your back. Wow, Steve, you really did a good job there. You helped change this or that. And there was no good feeling that you were succeeding. Some people are happy with just doing a regular 9-to-5 job and doing their work, and they don't really care. But for some reason, I wasn't getting that personal satisfaction knowing that I was contributing. And the one thing that I thought in selling airplanes was, listen, if I sell an airplane, it was all because of me. And I don't need anybody to tell me I did a good job. I closed the deal. We got paid. I made a commission. Presto. Okay, I feel good. I can measure my success.
That's true.
And it just makes you feel better about yourself. You don't need other people to say it. That's the whole process of me getting into that business.
Amazing. And I believe it took you about 8 months to sell your first jet.
Yeah.
So what was that first 8 months like, trying to figure out how to sell multi-million-dollar planes to people?
Going back to this word, emotional endurance, I thought I was a failure. Okay, I mean, after the first month or two, I think, this can't be no big deal. I'm selling airplanes. And, but my God, I mean, it was tough getting people on the phone, convincing them to talk to you, negotiating a contract, getting them to send money to somebody they didn't even know who you were, on an airplane you never even saw. I said, I got to get out of this business. This is terrible. I'll never make it through this. I felt like a loser, but just something inside me said, Steve, you got to keep doing this to sell one airplane. You can't walk away not selling one plane because you'll feel like you were a failure. No matter what happens, you got to stick around to sell a plane. You got to sell something. You have to do it. And then you can leave and say, I did it, I didn't like it, but at least you accomplished.
Yeah.
And so I just stuck it out and stuck it out. It was terrible. I was depressed going to work. Wow. When I sold the first airplane, I said, you know what? Let me do one more. I got a nice little check from that deal, and I said, I'll do one more, and see what happens. And it took me, I think, 2 or 3 more months. I sold another airplane, a smaller one, and I did that deal, and I just kept
Went
going.
from there. I think that's really good advice of if you start something, like at least try to sell one or at least do one.
Finish. Whatever you start, have the mindset to finish.
Yeah.
You
Because do you feel that people give up too soon?
100%.
Yeah.
You usually give up 2 seconds before it could happen.
Yeah, definitely. And so now you're starting to sell planes, getting more momentum. How did it go from that to then starting your own company?
So I did it for quite a number of years for 3 different companies, brokerage businesses. Eventually, I met this one guy who just took over this company. He called up my office and he was talking to my assistant. She came in one day and said, this guy's called 3 times already about leasing this Learjet.
Right.
And I said, he's called 3 times already? Yeah, he said he's the chairman of some company. I'm like, give me the telephone. What do you mean? I started talking to him and he said, yeah, we're looking at leasing the plane. We said, well, he's in New York. I said, okay, we could fly to show you the plane. We'll land at Newark Airport. You can come and meet us there because he was between New Jersey and New York. So we flew the jet over to show it to him. I met him. We hit it off pretty well. And I said, listen, I'm going into New York anyway. Can you give me a ride on your helicopter back to New York? And at that time, he agreed, let's go forward and lease this airplane from you.
Right.
And I said, listen, I don't want to sound like a car salesman, but another guy in my office is working on another deal. I really need to get this thing signed today because I don't know if the other guy's going to do the deal or not. And he said, all right, go to my lawyer's office in New York and work on the deal. So we fly in the helicopter from Newark Airport to New York City. Flying across, the guy offered me a job. At the time, it was making money counters for banks and coin counters. And I said, no, I'm sorry, I'm selling jets, man. I don't sell money counters. We landed, I went to his lawyer's office. And we're working on the transaction, on the lease, trying to negotiate all afternoon. It goes into the night, and it's now like 7, 8 o'clock. And I remember we were getting close to getting the deal done, but it wasn't ready yet. So I said to the lawyer, I really need to sign tonight before I leave. Let's take the signature page from the lease, get it signed, and we can come back and finish this up. And if you're okay with everything, you can attach it to the agreement and we'll be done. So he's a little weird. Okay, if you want to do that, we called the guy who was going to take the airplane. He said, I'm leaving the office. I said, really, where are you going? He said, I'm going to Barney's, a clothing store. And I said, well, I'm just wondering, where are you going? Because Barney was a 6, 7 story building. Oh, I'm going to buy, I don't know, some ties or some shirts or whatever. Okay, fine. I'll meet you there at 8 o'clock.
Right.
He said, what? I said, yeah, I'll meet you there at 8 o'clock. So I said to the lawyer, come on, let's go. We took the signature pages to the lease. We went to the clothing store and followed him to the store. We went to the shirt department, the tie department. He bought a shirt. I bought a shirt. He bought a tie. I bought a tie. And when we were all done, I said, okay, I need you to sign this page.
Yeah.
So I got him to sign the page, gave it to his lawyer, and he said, let's go back to the office. We went back to the office till about 10 or 11 o'clock at night. We finished the negotiation. We attached the signature page, and I left. I can't believe we did this. The guy then said, you sure you don't want to come work for me? He couldn't believe I was doing that. No, thank you very much. I had a good relationship with that guy from that time. Many years later, after selling him 3 jets, he offered me a job to come and work for him as right hand in a private equity merchant banking business.
Interesting. And so that was a departure from aviation for a little while?
Completely. I mean, well, besides, he had a flight department. He had, 2 jets and a helicopter at the time that I sold him.
Yeah.
So I oversaw the flight department, but I became his right-hand man. It was a private equity sort of merchant bank fund that owned a bunch of different companies. I was put in charge of real estate and corporate services, and the flight department was extra.
Interesting.
I got into the corporate world. I did that for something like 17 years.
Amazing. And it seems like really building those strong relationships, like following him around the mall, doing those things can set you apart and build those lasting connections.
Yeah, I just, again, it's to keep doing it until it's finished.
Yeah.
And the other issue is time kills deals.
Mm-hmm.
So anything you could do as quick as possible, because there's so many things happen that can change people's minds, or whether it's a government issue, a socioeconomic issue, a business issue, a weather issue, or they meet another friend and says, oh, did you hear about this or that?
Right.
So time kills deals, and as soon as you can get something done, stay on top of it until it's finished.
Yeah, that's great advice. So then from working in private equity, how did it go from that to starting the jet business?
So we took over a company here in London.
Okay.
It was a publicly traded property company. And so I left working for him, came over here with him, and when he took over this business in the UK, it was a publicly traded company, and I was in charge of selling a lot of the properties outside of the UK. But after 2 years, the acquisition didn't go well, and he said, I don't want this company anymore. He turned the company back to the receivers and said, I'm done, I'm leaving, and I'm going back to the States. I said, okay, when you come back? He said, no, I'm going back, I'm finished, I don't want this company anymore. So he didn't really have a job for me when we went back to the US. He had an investment in another property company in Florida, so he said, you can go work down there. So I went to go work in Florida, but after a year and a half or so, me and the head of that company didn't get along very well, and so I decided to leave. I still did some stuff on the side for the principal, but it wasn't full time. So then I got married, and I got into this fast food restaurant business with my ex-father-in-law. We bought a couple of chains of fast food restaurants, and I did that for a few years. So that was another step away from airplanes completely. But that lasted for about 3 years, and I finally got out of that industry, which wasn't my cup of tea anyway.
Sure. But I guess started that more entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, we took over this company, so it was into mergers and acquisitions. My ex-father-in-law was in that business, so I said we could buy this company, leverage it, and sell the real estate. And it was just from my knowledge of working for the other company, how you buy the company and merge it with the one you had. So we did that, and after a few years, we resold it to this what's called Yum Brands, which is KFC, Pizza Hut, Taco Bell.
Okay.
We had a company called Long John Silver's, which is like a fish and chips chain, and A&W, which is the first hamburger franchise fast food restaurant in the world. And we had about 2,500 restaurants, some owned and some franchised.
Okay, cool.
So we did that business, sold it to this company, Yum, which used to be called Tricon 3 Concepts. When they bought our two companies, they changed the company called Yum. Anyway, when we sold it, I was the president of our international division. And as part of the sale of the company, they said, you have to go to London and help us expand our business in Russia, Ukraine, all the ex-CIS countries, Central, Eastern Europe. I was surprised that they wanted me to do that. It wasn't really my thing, but they wanted me to do that as part of the deal. So for a year, I had to move to London again and do this business. When I was here, I started traveling to Russia and Ukraine and all these Eastern, Central European countries, trying to find partners for their fast food brands. And doing that with this business card, I was able to get into all the offices of all these oligarchs. And when I get into the office, sometimes I'd see this model of a jet on their desk. Oh, really? Why do you have that? Oh, it's my plane. And now it got me excited because now I could talk about something I love. So I used that calling card to actually meet a lot of people who had jets and build my network around Europe and CIS countries. And so that was sort of the next. I finished after a year doing what I had to do and moved back to the US. After a while, I just wanted to get back in the airplane business and came up with this idea of a showroom to sort of be different.
So in starting the jet business, if you could describe high level how it works, where the planes come from, just to set the context.
When I decided to get back into the business, the whole demographic distribution of airplane owners changed from when I left the business, which almost 20 years before. It used to be most of the business was in the US, 80%, and maybe, 18, 19% of the jets were in Europe. There was no really anybody else. And now, after 20 years, come back in, all of a sudden, you had Russia, Ukraine, China, Nigeria, India, all these emerging frontier markets where they were poor countries. But they really started developing, and there was big business there. So I wanted to get back in the industry and I wanted to deal with these international people, but it was really too expensive to go fly and see these people. So I figured, okay, I got to come up with an idea how I can get them to come and see me. So I came up with this crazy idea of building a showroom and get people to come. And I asked a bunch of friends, you know, or people in the industry what they thought about the idea. They all told me, yeah, you're crazy. And I figured, you know, I've learned, really, I've learned so many times, but you keep on doing this. You ask people for advice who have no knowledge of the business you're talking about, and normally have never done anything themselves outside the comfort zone. Why would you ask them for advice? It's so stupid. I mean, you're just looking for, you know, confirmation of what you want to do. But when they don't give it to you, you just go ask another person until you get it, right? But why ask people that have no knowledge of that business? What should I do? What do you think of this idea? It's just stupid. But everybody does it.
That's true.
So I just realized, you know what, I'm asking all these people, I don't care. I just feel in my head, that's the right thing to do. And I had this angel on one shoulder saying, Steve, do it, do it, do it. Yeah. And the other side is the devil. Are you crazy? Don't do it. You're going to die in this business. And what do I do? And I was going to do it in New York City. Okay. And then, you know, same reason all those guys do what we do in our life. I met a woman. She lived in London. I started coming back and forth to see her. And I'm like, you know, maybe I need to spend more time in London. I justified in my head that the international market outside the U.S. was underserved. And I decided, okay, I'm going to build it here in London. So that was a process of how I got into this.
Yeah, that's really interesting because now you sit in this space and you can't imagine anyone ever saying it's a bad idea. So it's really amazing that you didn't listen to that and really went for this vision.
I'm shocked that some of my competitors haven't done it yet, but it's because it's just too expensive. People don't want to spend the money.
Yeah.
Some of the manufacturers, Gulfstream, Bombardier, have actually built showrooms. Not street level. I think one in Beverly Hills is, but they've got their design sales centers now that they built.
Got it.
Realize they got to get people in the city center, not in their factory locations.
So when selling planes, my understanding is that people own planes and come to you when they're ready to sell, and then you basically are like an agent who then sells, or how do you describe what your position in that?
The normal business, like basically in real estate, like a real estate broker, the normal way is go and find people who want to sell airplanes and get an exclusive sales mandate to represent that airplane.
Okay.
Once you have that mandate, then you can start calling other people of smaller airplanes that might move up to that airplane, or you advertise the airplane. And people want that kind of airplane, they'll come to you.
Yeah.
And then it's your job to try to sell them your airplane over competitive airplanes. And that's the normal business. If you have the asset, people come to you. It's like in real estate, if you have a house for sale, people looking in that neighborhood, they're going to come to you if you advertise it.
Okay. So
So you control the asset. It depends on the person. You know, a lot of the time, once I met these people, a lot of times they started to become my clients. And so they came to me because I was trying to sell something, but if I didn't have the product they really wanted or the price was too high, I would try to work them to be my client. Let me go represent you to find the airplane. Sometimes they're represented by another broker like myself, but sometimes they're not, or sometimes they were, and I convinced them to change horses and come to work, you know, do it with me. But with the showroom concept, it actually has changed that business model. 50% of our business now are people come to us because they want us to represent them to go find the airplane for them.
Oh, interesting.
Then we'll go out and try to find the right airplane because we'll educate them and consult on what kind of airplane, what model airplane they should get. Most people just don't know about this industry. It's a very mysterious business. If you go see a friend who has an airplane, they'll say they have a Challenger or something, and they'll say to them, I got the perfect plane. You should go out and buy a Challenger 300 or a Gulfstream 450 or a Falcon. It'd be a perfect airplane for you. I sort of use the analogy, that's like, you know, meeting you for the first time and say, I got this guy I want to introduce you to. He'd be perfect for you.
Right.
And I don't know if you like tall, short, fat, skinny. I don't know anything. For me to say I know a perfect guy for you is stupid. And it's even more stupid to say I got the perfect airplane for you. You don't know if the person needs to fly 2 people, 8 people, go to Asia or South England, if you're looking to spend $5 million or $50 million. So unfortunately, people say, oh wow, thank you very much. That's great. I love your airplane. It's pretty and nice color seats. Yeah, I'll get this airplane. We take people through a different process and really focus on educating them on everything in the market Hopefully, by doing that, they see how much we know in the industry and want to mandate us exclusively to represent them to either buy or sell a plane. And that's the whole thing. The education is really a big part of our business, and hopefully that follows through with them wanting to do business with us. There was a New York clothing brand when I was a kid that had the advertising moniker that I just, for some reason, always stuck in my head. An educated consumer is our best customer.
Interesting.
I don't know why, it just always is in my head. And I think that's really speaks a lot for what we do.
Yeah.
You know, the more I can educate the person on what they should be getting, the more they know the answers to questions that they didn't even know to ask.
Right.
You know, the reason people don't move forward is because you don't know the answers to questions. And if you don't know the questions, you're not going to get the answer. If you don't know the answers, you're not going to move forward. So our process is hopefully to make them much more empowered and sure of why they're taking the next step.
Was the idea behind the showroom to get someone in it to see what they like, what they don't like, and then have something to anchor them on when you're explaining what can be different? And how did that play into the education piece?
Well, listen, the big percentage of people we do business with actually haven't been into the showroom.
Okay.
The showroom has got us a lot of media attention. It's got us to be a big known brand in our industry. Even if we talk to people on the phone, we try to do the same thing, educate them and give them a presentation that we can email them that does almost the same thing, but there's just no substituting sitting in front of our video wall and actually being interactive and ask every single question will change the next question and answer.
Yeah.
Because it's like when you're on the internet and you're reading a story and there's a link to something else that gets you into one sentence, and you go there and then you're reading that one and you get down halfway through the paragraph and then you link again and you know you're nowhere near where you started, but you learned everything you wanted to know.
Right.
And that's what our process does. It takes you through a process deeper and deeper into your personal specific needs.
The video wall, that goes, if you could describe what that is. I've seen it on your Instagram, but I think it's really interesting.
So the idea, obviously, my USB, you know, to be different in the industry was the showroom. So there's three things that are important with the showroom. One is get their attention when they're driving by. How do you get this person in that you would never meet before? That's what the fuselage does. It grabs their eye. Anybody in our industry, they want to come in and say, what's going on? Then when you come in, you need technology. Because nowadays, if you don't have a piece of glass that you could hit your finger against, you have no attention span. So we had to have the technology, so there's a video wall and the app to be able to push buttons. And deeper beyond that is you had to have the data. So you get them in, you got the technology, now you educate them. The process was how do you get them in, educate them, build that relationship, show that you have a sincere interest in trying to help them, them specifically, not just giving them a PowerPoint presentation in 1995, we have to go page 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, it really depends on what your needs are. The video wall is actually the full size, height and width of the interior cabin of the largest corporate jet manufacturer besides Airbus and Boeing. We can take you through a process, asking you so many questions, and when it's all done, you're going to see the full-size comparison of the floor plan, cross-sections, range maps, operating costs, video fly-throughs. I mean, anything possible that person will be super educated in 30, 40 minutes.
That's really cool because you grew the demand more by providing more education. And it seems like it also really helps with the choice overload or not knowing what you want by walking them through the different steps.
Yeah, and it actually, you almost have to back off at the end when you're with a client, because most times when you talk to somebody on the phone, they're going to ask you so many questions that you don't have the answer to. Let me get back to you. Let me get that to you. And most potential clients are expecting to ask you something that you're going to have to get back to them. They're never ready to make that decision. And here, there's not one question you can ask me that I can't answer you on the spot and show you the answer.
Amazing.
Okay? So you have to sort of even step back. Don't try to do a hard close. I hope you got all the information. Just take it and see if there's other questions you might have and let them go.
Yeah.
Reverse out that sales logic.
Interesting.
So that's the way we follow through with a client, and hopefully they still want to come back to us.
Yeah. And one more question on the sales, because I do think sales it's obviously very specific skill that takes a while to develop, but is so important to every business. What is your advice when it comes to sales and to people who are looking to get better at that skill?
Well, know your product. Know your product. Know your product.
Yeah.
And you can't have a canned, packaged presentation. It has to be personalized, especially in this business.
Yeah.
If somebody just think you're just trying to sell them something and you're going to move on, they don't really have time for you. They have a million people trying to sell them something.
Yeah.
We don't have to sell something next week in order to pay the bills. We're really trying to help people, educate them, and give them a sincere approach. If they want to do business with us, fantastic. And we're going to give them a better service than any of our competitors, as if we're spending our own money. And we like to have repeat and referral business. The only way to do that is to make sure you give every client 1,000% effort.
Amazing. Great advice. And in general, I'm curious, what do you think is the most important skill when it comes to business? And I would say the mindset of when it comes to business, or just the skills that you have.
I think asking a lot of questions from the client. Learn as much as you can about the client, his objectives, his needs, what their business is, and be seriously interested. A lot of time, the people we're dealing with are the who's who in a lot of different industries and a lot of different countries. I love learning about all these industries and businesses and cultures. So I'm always asking them about their business, maybe too much, and they're asking me about airplanes. So, there's a little bit of that back and forth. I'm seriously interested in it because of my other life when I was in private equity and mergers and acquisitions. I'm seriously curious, and I always want to learn. I always learn from these people. So know your product, learn about their demands and their requests and their objectives, because all that information will eventually help you direct your presentation better for them.
Yeah.
And never say no, you can't do it. Always look into it, let me see if there's a way, and just never, ever give up.
I love that. Never give up is a really key one. And that kind of leads into, in our introductory call, one thing that you had mentioned that really stood out to me is you've said you don't have to be a superhero to be successful. Curious if you could elaborate on that. I think people think you need to be a certain special type of way to be successful.
No, again, listen, if you know your product really well and you're the best in that knowledge base, you don't need to be a superhero. You need to be a superhero on that one product. You don't need to know everything else. And today, it's so much easier to start a business, be successful in something, and of course, different levels of success. In the old days, you needed to get an office, have money, send out mail, make phone calls, and advertise. But today, you can literally, I know friends of mine who their 10-year-old kids are, they found a way to buy sneakers on one website and sell them on another website for a profit. It doesn't cost you anything to set up a website. It doesn't cost you anything to market through social media. All these things are basically free. Yeah. And if you'll learn how to make a website, even that's free. So, of course, every level, like I said, of success is different. But just to start a business, start doing something on your own, it is so much easier today than it was. But you got to get out there and go to industry shows and learn. Yeah. You got to watch and listen to podcasts. You have to get information and be proactive in trying to get out there, meet people, and ask questions, and whatever your industry or business is you want to build. So it's never going to happen by sitting at home, just reading. Just get out there and shit happens.
Yeah. One other thing that I've heard you say that I also wanted to ask is you've said to do it for yourself because no one actually cares. Curious about that. So don't give up, keep going, but you should be not doing it for other people.
People get in a lot of trouble trying to inflate who they really are to impress their friends or even people who are not their friends, to elevate their perceived status in the public eye. The fact of the matter is nobody gives a shit about you. People get in debt, go to places they shouldn't be going, trying to be big superstars. They try to impress, whether it's a woman, a boss, a friend. They overextend themselves to try to make them perceived as being something they're not. First of all, if you don't like who you are, change it, and go and try to elevate yourself. Don't just do it by a fake post on social media. I really think you just have to worry about yourself and move forward. Don't even worry about your competition. I don't think about my competition at all. I just do what I'm doing. I'm not trying to compete with anybody. I'm just doing our business the way we do it. There's a couple of companies that do much more business than we do, but I have a different business model. I'm not trying to compete with them or be bigger than them. I'm happy with mine. I want to expand and maybe build another showroom in the US, but I'm not trying to compete with my competitors. And it goes down to even any business. Look forward. Don't keep looking over your shoulder. Just focus on what you want to do. You've got to have your own imagination and think of doing it your way. I mean, when I was younger, I was racing cars, Formula Ford cars. It's pretty intense when you're racing a car. I mean, you're sweating, your focus is so tight, you're going fast, you're going around these corners. One time I was racing and I was going around a turn and I looked for a half a second in this little mirror to see this guy coming up behind me. The second I took my eye off of where I was going and moved my eye back, the concentration wasn't exact. I hit the edge of the road, flipped the car over, and ended up in this ditch. I was okay, but I could have been seriously hurt. I wasn't. But even that moment, you realize, don't worry about who's behind you. I'm not competing to beat them. I'm looking at how do I improve my own business. And that's just, I think in any industry, how do you improve yourself? How do you improve your business and do what you need to do? You might look at the other guy and say, are they doing something better? How can I figure it out?
Yeah.
But where they are, where you are in that lineup, who cares?
Yeah, amazing. That's really good advice. And I'd love to end just with some of your general advice. So what would your advice be for people who maybe were in a similar position to you growing up, having to work their way up? What would your advice be to anyone who wants to start their own company or start their own venture, but are starting from square one?
They need to get some experience. In the old days, when I was younger, you didn't have internships. So how do you get an internship in somebody's business, in that kind of business? At least get your foot in the door, even if you want to be an investment banker and you don't have a master's in finance. Go get a job, and it sounds ridiculous. Go get a job, as a janitor in that company. Okay, in the mailroom, the old joke about every TV show, the guy worked in the mailroom and now he's the biggest agent. I mean, get in the door. Somehow get in the door. Just being around there, you'll start meeting the people in that business, learn that industry and that business. Who are the players? What are the people doing? Unfortunately today, people think they should be handed a job or business because they went through school, they did their university. It's not how it works. Unfortunately, getting out of university is your first real job. It's a good chance it's because who you know, not what you know. After that, it's what you know, what you can do. But that first job really helps if you know somebody. But if you can start somewhere in some lower position, just to get in there, you can be overqualified for it. Just get in the door. Don't think anything is beneath you when you're starting out.
Yeah.
The experience you can get from doing that, and you will meet somebody in there who say, maybe you could do this job, maybe you could do that job, and then maybe become an assistant, maybe become a runner, whatever. Each thing elevates your experience level, and you meet more people that way, more opportunities will come your way. But if you just sit home and wait for that perfect job or opportunity, it will never come.
That's true. I really like that. I really agree. One thing I've also heard you talk about is like setting a target. If you don't set a target, it can be really hard to progress in any way. Curious your thoughts about why it's important to set a target.
Yeah, well, there's no question if you don't have a target, you're never going to get there, right? And whatever target you're going to set, it is always going to change multiple times on your journey because you will learn something else on your way. You're like, well, that's not really what I thought it was, and this actually is a new opportunity I didn't even know existed. And that's the problem with kids in universities. They haven't had enough life experiences in the real world, be exposed to enough businesses and industries to really see something that they might fall in love with. I was lucky when I was 14, I got up in the airplane, I'm like, wow, this is amazing, and it just clicked in my head. I want to be doing something in aviation, I want to be a pilot. Most people, when you're going through school, you leave high school, you go to university, A-levels, whatever, you don't have exposure to that kind of stuff except for what your parents did or your friends' parents or something. So it's a very limited access. Of course, today with the internet and social media, there's a lot more exposure to different things. Unless it really clicks in your head. If you meet a guy or a girl and there's something that clicks, the chemistry, the energy, something that says, wow, there's something about this person I really enjoy, I like, and it just happens, right? And it's the same thing, I think, with a business, a career. Something has to click in your head and say, this is something I really like, this idea. What can I do in that industry? So it's how you, again, getting out there and just getting exposed to a lot of stuff. And kids in school are not old enough and exposed enough to really do that. And that's why they think they want to have some super duper job. They think they're going to invent an app one night and be a billionaire because they read about it by 50 people who've done this.
Right.
They forgot the other 8 billion who haven't. And you just got to get in the trenches. Unfortunately, getting out of university, that they teach you more how to be in the system, not think outside that box.
No, I do agree that really trying to be in tune and understand what gives you that spark and excitement and start to follow that direction and try to sell one or do one thing in that area and see where it goes is really important.
And look, you're doing this now
Yeah.
because it came out of doing the mental health thing. And
Right.
if you're in that space, you'll try to figure out what clicks.
Yeah, definitely. Well, my last question that I ask is, what advice would you want to give others when it comes to their mindset?
I forgot who said this. Might have been Bill Gates, but I won't take credit for the saying. But it's most people overestimate what they could do in a year, but underestimate what they could do in 10 years. The advice I have is make a succession plan. If you can write your CV in 5 or 10 years from now, you had a blank piece of paper, what would you want it to say? What you're doing in 10 years, 5 years, 2 years. That's your plan. Now in reverse, how do I get to that first step?
Yeah.
If you don't put pen to paper and write it down, I mean literally, not write it down, not type it, get a pen, a pencil, and write down the points. I want to do this, I want to do that. It's like if you want to write a book. You could say, I want to write a book, and you say, what am I going to put down? When you put that pen in your hand and you start writing, it's amazing what happens.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's what it is. There's some kind, I'm sure, science to it.
No,
But
definitely.
get a pen, write on a piece of paper, this is what I want to be in 10 years. This is, okay, what's the step that should happen before that? What should happen before that? What do I need to do to get that first step? Even if you have to take baby steps to get there, start going, calling, showing up in somebody's office, asking questions, learning about it, researching it, doing a lot of kind of stuff. You just, nothing is going to be given to you. Nothing is going to be given to you. Have that attitude and always think, if I want it, I got to go out there and get it.
I love that. And I think the writing it down, I don't know the exact science, but I think it is like it's showing to your own brain that it is possible and the steps to get there, laying it out like that. Even that step can make it so much more achievable.
It just happens.
Yeah.
I mean, tomorrow I'm getting this award Saturday. It's called the Living Legends of Aviation.
Oh, wow,
It's a
amazing.
in our industry, it's a very, very high level kind of thing. And what am I going to say? Acceptance speech, what do I think? I don't know, I'm going to do thank this, that. I don't know what I was doing. And finally I said, you know what? Take my pen and I start writing. And just happens. And okay, you're going to change, alter it. And now you don't even have to do it. Go on ChatGPT and say, I want to mention this. I want it to be 3 minutes.
Right.
What should it say? And then
Yeah.
it does it for you.
That's
but
true.
the fact of the matter is that won't be as good as you actually writing
Right.
yourself.
I agree. Well, congratulations. That's amazing.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. This was a great conversation, and I really appreciate you taking the time.
I hope you got what you wanted. It's been a pleasure talking with you on
We
this
did.
subject.
Thank you so much.
This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. For more episodes, search for the MINDXFRAME podcast where you stream for podcasts, or find us at MINDXFRAME podcast on Instagram. See you next time.